What if I told you the life you are chasing is not 10 years away, not even 3 years away, but just 180 days away? Not magic, not luck, not talent, just 6 months of focus that most people never dare to commit to. Because the truth is simple. Most people don't fail in life, they quit too early. Every successful transformation looks impossible at the beginning. People think success is built on big moments, sudden breakthroughs, lucky breaks, perfect timing. But real success is boring in the beginning. It is daily discipline, small decisions, quiet sacrifices, repeated again and again. 6 months is enough time to rebuild your body, reshape your mindset, restart your career, and redesign your entire identity if you stop negotiating with your excuses. Today, you are not just hearing motivation. You are being handed a structure, a mental blueprint for transformation. Most people think transformation begins with motivation, but it actually begins with a single moment of decision that cuts off every other option. The problem is not that people don't want a better life, it's that they want it while still protecting the comfort of their old one. They say they want change, but they also want to keep the habits, the excuses, and the distractions that built their current situation. That is where everything collapses before it even starts. A real decision is not emotional. It is final. It does not negotiate with fear. It does not wait for perfect conditions. It does not ask for approval from friends or family. It is the point where you quietly declare to yourself that going back is no longer an option. Not because you are forced, but because you have chosen a different identity. Most people stay stuck because they live in contradiction. One part of them wants success and another part still enjoys the habits that destroy success. They try to balance both, but life does not reward divided energy. Every day they delay the decision. They are not standing still. They are slowly reinforcing the same identity they are trying to escape. You cannot become disciplined while still allowing unlimited access to distraction. You cannot become focused while keeping comfort as your priority. At some point, you have to choose which version of yourself deserves control. And that choice is not loud. It often happens quietly when you stop explaining your failures and start owning them. The truth is, your future is not waiting for more time. It is waiting for a cleaner decision. A decision that says, this is who I am now, even when your habits are still catching up. Because identity always leads behavior, not the other way around. Once that decision is made, everything changes in structure. You stop asking, do I feel like doing this? And start asking, is this aligned with who I decided to become? That shift may look small, but it is the difference between a life of repetition and a life of transformation. Until that decision is made fully, every plan will feel heavy. Every goal will feel distant. But the moment you commit without backup options, your entire direction begins to change, even if your circumstances have not yet moved. The first stage of any real transformation feels nothing like success. It feels slow, uncomfortable, and strangely unrewarding. This is where most people make a serious mistake. They expect early effort to produce early results. When it doesn't happen, they assume something is wrong with the plan, or worse, something is wrong with them. So they stop. But what they don't realize is that the first phase is not designed to show progress. It is designed to test whether you are serious enough to continue when nothing is rewarding yet. In the beginning, your mind will resist you more than the world ever will. You will wake up and feel no excitement. You will plan your day and immediately feel pressure. Old habits will start calling you back with comfort disguised as logic. You will hear thoughts like, start tomorrow, take it easy today, or you can balance it out later. This is not weakness. This is the system of your past self trying to protect itself from change. The first 30 days are where your identity is still fragile. You are no longer fully who you were, but you are not yet who you want to become. That middle space creates discomfort, and most people escape discomfort by returning to familiarity. But transformation only belongs to those who can sit in that discomfort without running away from it. There will be days when everything feels pointless, days when effort feels heavier than reward, days when you look at your progress and think nothing is happening. But that is exactly where the foundation is being built. Because discipline is not created in moments of motivation. It is created in moments where motivation is absent and action still continues. You are not supposed to feel powerful in the beginning. You are supposed to feel tested. You are supposed to feel the weight of resistance. That resistance is not a sign to stop. It is proof that something inside you is being reshaped. Most people underestimate this phase because it does not look dramatic. There are no visible victories, no external applause, but internally, something critical is happening. You are slowly breaking the automatic cycle of old behavior. Each time you act against your old habits, you weaken them. And each time you repeat discipline, you strengthen a new identity. If you can survive this phase without quitting, you do something more powerful than achieving results. You prove to yourself that your actions are no longer controlled by how you feel. And once that realization settles in, your entire path begins to change quietly, long before the world notices it. Most people try to change their lives by changing their mood, but mood is one of the least reliable things you can depend on. It rises and falls without permission. It responds to sleep, stress, environment, and even random thoughts. If your progress depends on how motivated you feel each day, then your progress is already unstable. That is why real success is never built on emotion. It is built on structure. When you rely on feelings, you become inconsistent without even realizing it. One good day makes you believe you are committed, and one bad day makes you believe you are failing. This emotional cycle keeps you trapped in repetition. You start strong, then slow down, then restart again. But restarting is not progress. It is just repeating the same beginning over and over. Systems remove this uncertainty. A system does not ask you how you feel. It simply tells you what happens next. Wake up at a fixed time, not because you feel ready, but because it is scheduled. Work on your goals at a set hour, not because inspiration arrived, but because it is part of your structure. Train your discipline like you train your body, through repetition, not emotion. The difference between people who succeed and people who struggle is not intelligence or opportunity, it is consistency. And consistency does not come from motivation. It comes from designing a life where the correct action is the default action. When you remove decision-making from every small step, you reduce mental resistance. And when resistance is reduced, action becomes natural. Think of systems as invisible rails. Once you place your life on those rails, you do not need to push yourself every moment. You simply follow the direction you already set. Without systems, every day feels like a negotiation with yourself. With systems, every day becomes predictable movement toward a goal. This is why discipline feels difficult at first, but becomes easier over time. Not because you become stronger emotionally, but because your environment starts supporting your behavior. You stop relying on willpower and start relying on repetition. And repetition has a powerful effect. What feels forced in the beginning slowly becomes automatic. What once required effort eventually becomes identity. You are no longer deciding to act disciplined, you are simply following the pattern you built. At that point, success stops being something you chase daily. It becomes something you are already structured to produce, even on days when your mind is tired or your emotions are low. Most people don't realize how much their life is shaped not by what they do, but by what they allow to stay in it. Every distraction, every unhealthy habit, every negative influence does not just take time and isolation. It slowly reshapes the direction of your entire life. And the most dangerous part is that it rarely feels dangerous in the moment. It feels small, harmless, even normal. But over time, these small leaks become the reason people never reach their potential. If you look closely, success is not only about adding more discipline, it is also about removing what constantly pulls you backward. You can try to build focus, but if your environment keeps breaking it, your progress will always feel slow. You can try to build confidence, but if you stay around people who doubt everything, your mindset will slowly absorb that doubt. You can try to build a better routine, but if your habits are constantly interrupted by distractions, your structure never becomes strong enough to hold. This is why transformation requires courage, not just effort. It requires the courage to cut things that feel familiar but are silently damaging your future. Sometimes it is habits that give short-term comfort but long-term regret. Sometimes it is people who keep you emotionally comfortable but mentally stuck. Sometimes it is digital distractions that promise relaxation but steal your focus hour by hour without you noticing. The hardest part is not identifying what is wrong. Most people already know what is weakening them. The hardest part is being strict enough with yourself to remove it completely, because the mind will always try to justify keeping it. It will say you need balance, that you should not be extreme, that you can manage both. But in reality, most people don't need more balance. They need fewer openings for weakness. Every yes you give to distraction is a silent no to your future. And those small decisions accumulate. Over months, they decide whether you move forward or stay stuck in the same cycle. That is why discipline is not only about adding good habits, it is about protecting your energy like it is limited, because it is. When you start removing what weakens you, something interesting happens. At first, life feels emptier, but slowly that empty space gets replaced with clarity. Focus becomes easier, progress feels smoother, and your mind stops being constantly divided. You do not rise by doing everything, you rise by refusing what pulls you down repeatedly. There comes a stage in every real transformation where everything goes quiet. The excitement fades, the initial energy disappears, and what remains is repetition without reward. This is the phase where people begin to doubt their path, not because something is wrong, but because nothing new is happening fast enough to satisfy their expectations. This silence is one of the most misunderstood parts of growth. In the beginning, effort feels powerful because everything is new. You feel change happening quickly, even if it is small. But after some time, your actions become routine. You are still doing the work, but the emotional response is gone. No one is clapping, no one is noticing, and internally it starts to feel like you are walking without moving forward. This is where most people lose patience and misinterpret silence as failure. But real development often hides in this phase. Growth does not always announce itself. It does not always provide visible signs in the middle stages. Instead, it works quietly beneath the surface. Your habits are being reinforced. Your discipline is being tested without distraction. Your consistency is being measured without external reward. And your identity is slowly being reshaped in ways you cannot immediately see. This is the stage where belief becomes more important than emotion, because emotion will not support you here. It will try to convince you that nothing is happening, that your effort is wasted, that you should switch paths or restart something new. But belief allows you to continue even when feedback is absent. The challenge is not that progress stops, but that progress becomes invisible for a while. And invisibility is uncomfortable. The mind struggles with effort that does not produce immediate confirmation. That is why so many people abandon their routines at this point. They confuse quiet development with no development. But if you observe carefully, this phase is where stability is being built. You are no longer just trying to act disciplined. You are becoming someone who operates with discipline even when there is no external reason to do so. That shift is not dramatic, but it is foundational. Most people never reach the visible reward stage because they stop in the invisible stage. They quit just before the results begin to surface. Not because they were incapable, but because they misread silence as absence of progress. Those who continue through this phase without breaking their consistency eventually realize something important. The work was never stopping. It was simply compounding quietly, preparing to show itself when the foundation was strong enough to hold it. By the time you reach the later months of real transformation, something inside you begins to shift in a way that is difficult to explain but impossible to ignore. The effort that once felt heavy starts to feel natural. The struggle that once required constant willpower begins to fade into background behavior. It is not that life becomes easier, but you become different in how you respond to it. In the earlier stages, you were forcing yourself to act against your habits. Every disciplined action felt like a battle. But after enough repetition, that internal conflict starts to reduce. The mind stops arguing as much. The excuses that once felt convincing begin to lose their power. And slowly, without dramatic realization, your actions begin to align with your identity instead of your resistance. This is the stage where discipline is no longer something you practice, but something you embody. You no longer wake up negotiating with yourself about whether to do the work or not. You simply move toward it because that direction has become normal. What once required pressure now requires no explanation. The most powerful change happening here is not external success, but internal identity stabilization. You stop seeing discipline as something separate from you. It is no longer an act, it becomes your default mode. And when behavior becomes default, consistency no longer depends on motivation, environment, or emotional state. There is also a quiet emotional shift in this phase. The version of you that used to crave comfort begins to lose influence. You start to notice that the habits you once struggled to break no longer appeal to you in the same way. Not because you are forcing resistance, but because your standards have changed. Your mind starts rejecting what it once accepted. At this point, progress becomes less about effort and more about maintenance. You are not constantly building something new every day. You are reinforcing what you have already built. And that reinforcement creates stability, which is the real foundation of long-term success. What is most important to understand is that this stage does not feel like achievement. It feels like normal life. But that is exactly what makes it powerful. Because when discipline stops feeling special and starts feeling normal, you are no longer dependent on motivation at all. And from this point forward, your future is not defined by sudden changes or emotional decisions, but by the identity you have quietly built over time, one consistent action at a time, until it no longer feels like effort at all. 6 months is not a long time, but it is long enough to become unrecognizable. The question is not whether transformation is possible. The question is, will you finally stay consistent long enough to meet the version of yourself you keep dreaming about? Because that version is not far away. It is waiting on the other side of discipline,